content and thinking through arguments. Having back and forth conversations. All right. So welcome to the Wednesday afternoon discussion here in the Steel Center. And we've been hey, what's up? We've had a series going, Bridges Across Harkrider, which will manifest itself in a bunch of different ways throughout the year. So far, we've had faculty presenting and talking about either the questions about the athlete, non-athlete difference or whatever, but then also just talking about sports last time. We're going to have coaches eventually come and lead discussions, which I'm very excited about. Also have more faculty leading discussions next semester, people who do sports psychology, people who do sports management, there'll be other talks next semester. But we're really interested in having student-led discussions and in general, right? And having that be something that happens more at the Steel Center. So I thought it would be a good idea to have a student-driven open discussion about this question. And, you know, faculty have discussed raised issues about kind of the divisions between athletes and non-athletes. And there's different ways that people have talked about it. Like, let's not talk about it at all. It's a common way that people respond to it. There's not actually a division. They're all students, right? Like, we all care about each other. We're a community. Let's not discuss it. Which I think sometimes that way of approaching it's not the best. If there is actual worries or divisions or some tension, right? Then let's, I think, talk through it. Let's do it constructively. Another response is to do like name calling or, you know, engage in rhetoric. It's harmful. We want to avoid that, right? We want to make sure we avoid stereotypes or generalities. Avoid name calling, right? And listen to each other, right? Figure out how different people describe what we take the issue to be, right? So I'm just going to open it up to the students. I want to hear from the students. I'll be taking mental notes myself, just as a person that's interested in figuring out as a faculty member, how do I characterize what students take to be the issue or the problem, the tension. And then how do we think about solutions or ways to like dissolve the tension, let's say, right? Or become a more unified community. So I'll open it up to anyone who wants to lead. And it doesn't have to be one person throughout.
I mean, I definitely think there's an issue with, this is kind of going greater than the actual problem itself, but I do think there's an issue with the amount of people that want to engage in conversation. I think it's important that when we have something like this, when it's a very like a useful conversation to have and like a really something that me and Joe recognize as like anyone who's here recognizes a very important conversation to be had. And there's 10 of us on campus as opposed to what feels like a conversation that is talked about by everyone, but no one really wants to have that discussion like in a setting like this. And I think that's, I don't want to say that that's obviously not the issue, but that does, there's that sort of, there's not a deterrent there in the sense that we can't all come together like this when there's a great opportunity that you guys are putting on like this.
Yeah. What do you think about if it were a bigger conversation, what would it be? Mandatory. Mandatory. Pizza. It would involve. And that's an interesting idea.
I just want to throw that out there before we got into
because like the question is I can pass that on and say that's a key idea, right? Like that's something that came out of this conversation. We need a broader conversation, one that everyone can attend, maybe a convocation event or something like that.
I was talking with some friends because I went to the first one of these with Dr. Stowe. I thought it was really good. I asked them like, why did they come? Why they're not coming today? It's because they have practice.
Yeah.
So I think like, yeah, the events are great. I really like going to them, but people can't because of athletics.
Right.
But they want to come. I should emphasize that. So like part of it is when some people don't want to come, that's okay. But the people who do want to come, they're also busy
Yeah.
with like the issue we're kind of debating right now. So I think that's something good to keep in mind when planning stuff.
Definitely. We have, as the Steel Center talked about, when our discussions are. An hour ago, we were just discussing that, right? And it's been discussed for years. It used to be Friday afternoon discussions, and it used to be at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoons, which is in some ways worse, right? Because that's when athletes are traveling for their sports. And so we moved it to Wednesday, partly to be able to accommodate that. But we can't schedule anything in competition on Thursday because that's like out. That's like not it's reserved time for see awards or whatever. And then on Tuesdays, it's usually only on faculty meetings or other things during the convocation period. And actually, longer ago, Wednesdays used to be like the cultural event afternoon. So that's why we moved it to Wednesdays. But it's tough because I'm grateful that students are here, right? But I think a broader conversation is necessary, and at a time when everyone's available. So it's good. It's both meta conversation things we have to think about.
My question would be is if you think that's a group that you'll get to your end goal by saying it's mandatory, right? Rather than how much traction do you gain by maybe to your point about changing scheduling of it, like maybe 1 month it's on a Wednesday afternoon, another day it's on a Tuesday morning or whatever.
Yeah.
And then let it gain natural traction because I think somebody made a point, right? Like people want to participate, but I think that a lot of times you got lacrosse people here, but I think a lot of times the athletes are just so busy. But I think another opportunity is to kind of look at how do the athletes and the non-athletes intersect, right? And at least from a campus perspective, I will go to a football game and I'll go to a basketball game.
Mhm.
And so far, both football games that we've played this year, other colleges have had either drum corps or drum, what do you call it, drum lines?
Yeah.
Bands, all that kind of thing, and we don't, but it'd be a natural way to start having people mix together.
Yeah, kind of going off of that. I was actually looking in one of the past yearbooks, and it was showing pep rally in the Brickman,
Mhm.
where like the football team was there, and it was before like some big game, and the cheer team did a performance. And I don't know if it was mandatory, but there were just tons of people there.
Right.
And I think that's something that is kind of crossing between like anybody can show up to it. It's in the middle of the academic side of campus. It's something that everyone can show up to, kind of see see everyone. So I think that is something cool that we could also, try and get back to.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be cool.
Well, we've talked about faculty going, like saying committing to being like aligned with the sport for a year. And then just like go and encouraging other people to go. Right. Which is something. But I think, I think that's there's a sense in which having a pet band, that would change things. It would make it everybody's concern. Right? And it would be like a school spirit thing. Right? It would be important, for sure.
I mean, and we've already got, right, you've already got musician. You already have like graduates.
There have been pep bands here before.
Right.
Yeah.
They used to practice. But even if it were just like a drum line, right, it's something that it was something small. But the other thing that I thought too is just we've got people that sing, and I guess my correlation is always music to sports, but you could have somebody that sings from the music department come sing the national anthem at the football games, at the cross country meets, at the whatever. Just again, it's just another interaction. Plus, I think for a student, give that person some practice and experience.
I think to that point too, something we talked about, I think in the first talk it kind of goes both ways as well, putting the onus back on us as athletes. Like I think there's a big thing that we all talk about within like athletic circles of like supporting each other's teams. Like, hey, if we show up to the baseball team's games, then they'll show up to our games. I think that should translate past just sports. I know me and Joe were taking advantage the other night of going to that screening in Huntley Show Theater
Last night.
last night, actually. We're taking advantage of that, and like, not to say that that is going to spark some revolution, but like having athletes show up to things that aren't just other athletic events, I think is going to be something that other people will see, and hopefully, I don't want to say it's a guaranteed reciprocate, but something that other people will see and recognize as us not being so on one side and in our own circles that we are too far above interacting with like a music event or a film event.
I want to say something, but I know David has his hand up. Sorry, David. You
Oh
want
no,
to
I
say
was gonna say like on the point of like when you said that people aren't showing up to stuff like this, even though it's kind of like necessary. I agree with that. I think there's something to be said about like conversation being like anonymous. Cause I feel like when you like people are kind of just like more negative because like they're anonymous. I mean, their identity won't be known. But then when it comes to like a more like intimate setting like here, where there's like a face and a voice attached to all the opinions, then I feel like that kind of like scares people away from participating. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I think it's interesting that like this conversation seems to be at its peak when people are like in either like a group setting of like the extreme group thing, or just like where they're anonymous and there's not like a person, I guess, characteristic attached to them. And I don't exactly know where I'm going with that, but I just feel like
Well, I think sometimes with larger conversations, if it is a big, abortion conversation, let's say, there's a tendency for us to set it up in a way that like there's people on a panel who are talking and everyone listens to them, which is good to some degree. But in a sense, it's not, it's in some ways could shut down conversation, right? So if we're like exploring all the different ways that there might be an issue, in the sense of where us as this group brainstorm a little bit, it may be more productive in a sense than hearing the panel. And the structure of a panel is actually what it means is there's say 4 people that tell you something, then you respond to them, right? And that's good, but in the sense it's a different thing. Right? So I think there's a sense of intimacy that can be gained from these are the people who showed up. So we have the conversation organically from who showed up, right? And think about from each of our points of view how others might think about this problem and characterize that, talk about it from our points of view and see where it goes. Does that make sense?
To that, I think it might be helpful for us collectively here to sort of diagnose the problem as we see it. So I think that might be like a good place to start.
I agree with that. I wanted to ask, because I mean, I missed the last couple of these conversations, and I have heard about this divide, but I'm not sure I know what it is precisely. I hear suggestions about supporting each other in terms of attending events. Is that the issue? A lack of support?
I think the issue is it's kind of like complex, but I think the main thing is that athletes are seen as one group and non-athletes are seen as another. And like just like an issue of getting them to mix or like the perceptions each group has about the other group and just viewing them as like this group is active as well is kind of part of the issue. And like because we're all students here at Hendrix, so it's like how did this divide form and like how can we mitigate this and like get back to remember that we're all just attend the same institution and that we're all here to like learn and grow together and that it's not about like who plays sports and who doesn't.
I guess
It's a good idea though.
Mhm.
So, I mean, whether it's sports or not sports, I mean, I've known you for what, half of the time I've been here at the college, and I've seen you what, 3 times?
Yeah.
Because I just don't, and I see Jamie in passing, but I mean,
Okay.
ignore for a minute, just the sports and non-sports thing. It's like, I think we're all guilty of getting so busy in our daily, whatever it is, that you don't sometimes appreciate the beauty of the campus, the people around you. And the pep rally might break down a lot of these walls.
I guess I also would like to, I mean, these perceptions, in what way do they translate? And, might be a touchy subject and I don't need like names or whatever, but like, how's the treatment different? Because I'm trying to think like, because I might engage in these treatments, but I just don't realize that I'm treating my student athletes different than I try to treat the others. And in my mind, I'm trying to think, and I said, no, I don't, but I'm aware that I could be missing something.
Well, that's a worry from, the faculty point of view. I want to make sure that students who are going away for games, which is an excuse thing, I'm like, you're totally excused. Go on your game, play well, enjoy playing your sport. Like, sure, you're gonna miss my class, and other students won't, but like, I care about you as someone who's doing that. That's part of what we do here, right? Like, I think that's something that athletes feel like they're being treated equally, right? Does that make sense?
I mean, I've always felt no pressure at all from my teachers or the faculty in any way of like missing in any way. Like they're always that's the exact notion that has been presented to me. I ever communicate with the teacher. Obviously, the onus comes on me at a point to communicate with the teacher that like, hey, I'm gonna be missing, and that's just like it. But yeah, no, that's 100% how I felt from the faculty. It's good to know.
I'd like to counter that because I've had some past experiences. I'll miss for like a week at a time for our mid-season and conference swim meets. And I've had a couple of faculty members in the past are like, no, like you can't be missing that much. And like, unfortunately, that's just how my schedule lines up. I think it depends on which department it comes from because I feel I've had different departments, like my anthropology and psychology sides, but like my extracurricular, sometimes they're not super friendly about it.
Well, everyone should know that it's like institutional excused absence, right? Like it's not even up to the professor. Right?
No.
So just so you know, like spread the word. You're totally excused, right? For and even if it is like a conference thing.
So yeah, I think another thing with that is it's like athletes aren't excited to miss class.
Yeah.
Like the last thing I want to do is miss class. Have you guys talk to me. If you guys talk about something and come back, the next class and you're building on that. What's going on?
Right.
It's a nerve-wracking thing for me, especially when I was freshman last year. I was very nervous to miss my first class, and worried that I was like, even if the professor told me I was going to missing their instruction, who knows if they were going to say something in class that would just spark with me, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I think that athletes, it's going to still mean I'm not have to wake up to go to class, maybe just lay on the bus and be lazy, but at the same time, you're definitely not. I at least have never, wow, I'm just glad I don't have to show up to that class today and
Right.
I just miss all that instruction. At the end of the day, we're all here to, like David said, we're all here to learn. We're all here to get degrees.
I do think there's a holistic problem that what people at Hindrance are here for. And I think that's like on like a macro scale, like applies to everyone. And I think for me, it's kind of like, oh, like you have to tell your teacher, like, oh, I'm in this class. And the teacher's like, what are you here at Hindrance for? And I think that a lot of people at Hindrance get kind of like confused and find the need to pick and choose what they want to be a part of and like pick and choose like what they enjoy at Hindrance when like kind of like the point of college and point of liberal arts education is kind of like unto the whole person. And so I think it's just like difficult when some people are like, oh, I'm here for sports. And I think that also comes with the lack of interest, which is also a thing where it's like, I don't know, when I came in as a freshman, COVID had just happened. And so there was like, even the year before me, like hadn't really spent time on campus. And so there was kind of a confusion on what life on campus is. And kind of like a building on like what are you here at Hendrix for? And so like, if someone's here for sports, then that kind of like already defeats the purpose of them like participating in anything else. But there's a problem in the mindset of like, oh, I'm here for this, I'm here for that, when that kind of like defeats the purpose of college as a whole. And I think, like as Ian said earlier, like I try to do everything I can at school, and it's like so much more fun and engaging than I thought. And I think it is because the person I believe like what you put in. And there's a lot of people not putting stuff out and like coming to events. And so then the other people that are with us like aren't receiving the same amount of like intentionality engagement from
the greater campus.
I think you have the nail on the head.
I think I think that's a good way of putting it, and I think that's related to something Michelle said that I think is very right. The fact that I mean, it sounds like trying to do too much is a possibility, and focus on something becomes kind of a way to really just survive, because there are a lot of optional activities, optional ways to go around. But I feel like even just keeping up with a few is already very taxing. Just being too busy. I mean, for example, I wouldn't begrudge someone who says, I'm just focused on this, because honestly, just trying to do everything just feels too overwhelming. So I think thinking of ways in which it's not overwhelming, and that we have still time to say, well, we can meet and talk about something else. It just feels difficult to find that. I can say that. I mean, if I don't go to games, honestly, it's not a lack of interest. I'm just on a weekend. I'm just really tired. I just want to do nothing. Kind of be quiet in my house with my cat.
But I think that from an athlete's standpoint too, like you said, it's you don't come to school to be like, let me miss school. It's counterintuitive, right? But then it's like between practice and now we're already behind if you had to travel. So you're behind for travel time, you're behind because you missed class. Now you gotta catch it all back up and you still come back from your conference swim or your whatever you traveled for, and then you're and you still have to go to still the new classes and make up. I mean, it's gotta be hectic.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Well, I want to continue the hawk, but just I've kind of been having a very similar conversation with all my advisees. Just because I have new student advisees and returning student advisees, and everyone is feeling a little discombobulated and pulled in multiple directions and overbooked and overscheduled and overstressed and whatever. And I think I actually think that the grown-ups on campus are responsible for quite a bit of that, right? And we don't plan it that way, right? Like we want you to have work-life balance, but we're also terrible role models at work-life balance, right? Like we tend to be perfectionists and also obsessed with what we do and love what we do, right? So we want to do it well. And we want to go to every cool thing that happens on campus and just support students. And, we're not always so good at saying, no, wait, I got to sleep tonight, right? Like I got to do these things to take care of myself. So if you're feeling like you're professor, yeah, we're not great role models for this, right? So that could be a reason why you're feeling some of this pressure. And it's not necessarily intentional, but I think that some of it really is on the shoulders of the grown-ups.
Oh, good. I think the balance is really important, but then I also have done the traveling and then got back. And it sucks, and the next day fall asleep in a class I really enjoy. And not to say it's not hard, but it's just a tough love. There's a kind of effort that you need to put in if you want to have fun. And there is. And I've talked to a lot of people. No one at Hendrix doesn't have it. And I know that because professors tell me I have an hour to put in instead. And I think that's what it is. And it's if you play sport, I know swim's a little bit weird. I know golf's a little bit weird. It's not having a season, and it's almost all year. But I see swimmers here. And so I think it is just an effort part. And I do know people that have never been to a Hendrix event that was mandatory. And that's and that's a choice kind of thing. But then I do think that a root of the problem is choosing not to engage, choosing not to participate, or trying to make an impact on your own, complaining. It's something that I find really hard to struggle with, and especially getting almost animosity from some people. I'm not saying people don't like me. It's just random comment on the internet. It goes both ways, obviously. But it's athletes don't try to do anything or talk to people, and it's I should appear. I'm here to learn. There's not a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, and I think there's a balance. But then I also think it's being flexible with your time, being flexible with people around you, and understanding that you at Hendrix, this is definitely my opinion, have an obligation to make it. You pay to go here, you go to classes, you have an obligation to do something for your community. So it's But even if you're not friends with the people on your team, it's like, oh, kind of on this trip, and now I'm back and finally to hang out with my friends. Like, go hang out with your friends and like go to a multicultural event with all your friends. It'll be great. You'll get free food and you get to hang out. And then other people at the event that will see you there and see that there are people who intentionally care about that and what they're trying to do, even if you don't truly care. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I went to grad school in New York City. I remember having studied a lot or get a PhD, but I could also go to a Yankees game. I can go listen to jazz. I can go do all these things. In New York City, one of my favorite cities in the world, it's pulled in all those directions. I mean, it's like a buffet of possible things to do. And I felt like I was always kind of missing out. But when I just figured out how can I find out the things that I should go to, like really go, right? The things that I should not miss. There's a sense of like, oh, it's okay. I don't have to go to all these things. I can like do this in a well-rounded way, right? So I think there some of that discussion would be helpful, like from everybody, right? Like sometimes there are events that I say to my students once a semester, you have to go to this one because this one I regret later. But sometimes I don't, maybe people don't know it's actually a really important game, right? Or a lot of people are going to show up to this, or this is going to be especially significant. Same deal with any of the events. But I think too, on the other side, people always sometimes people say, "Oh, you have a garden, you play music, do philosophy, teach. How do you have time for all these things?" And I'm like, I just do all of them to like not as good. You know what I mean? Like, so there is a sense in which I can't like give everything to one thing in order to do a lot of different things. And I accept that. So like I try to do, each of them well, and sometimes I come up short. So it's also like there's only 24 hours in the day, 7 days a week. There's a sense in which you can't do more than that. So if I just fill my life with the things I'm passionate about, try to make it well-rounded, can't, like I just also too, like I have this tendency that people say ultra busy or whatever. That's like something we need to critique too. Like that's a thing we say in order to make ourselves important. We don't need to say that. Like we all do the same things. We all live 24/7. And so there is a sense in which like do the things you're passionate about. Share it with others. Encourage them to share it with you. That's the way I see it. Outline the things that are great to go to.
I think one thing that I've noticed with like I'll speak for Slum specifically, you guys might have the same issue as well, but like it's the hard part of finding the time in between the practice schedules. Like I know today alone, I've been up since 5 o'clock. I've been practice this morning, class all day. I'm here at this, and then I have to go straight back to practice and study 2 hours afterwards. Like, we're required to go to these practices because that's part of what we had signed up for. Like I know if I sign a contract every single season, I sign a contract that says I'm here to be a part of this sport. I'm here for this that my coach provides us, and because of that, that means I'm required to be at all these swim events. And I somehow, I don't know how I manage it, but I know Joe sees me sometimes running from one thing to the next. Like orientation alone, I was boom.
Yeah.
And I just know some people don't have that luxury.
So then how do we say how do we dial back? It's like other people tell you need to do that much practice and do that much, have that many games. Like there's a sense in which why are we demanding, like should professors have fewer assignments? Should athletes have let fewer demands on them? Should there be fewer cultural events that are kind of pulling at you? Like in what sense can that be dialed back? just gonna do that. Is that a question?
I want to ask the athletes a question about that. And it's not like targeted or being negative or anything, but like I want to get your opinion on mandatory fun. Because that's a thing that exists for most of the team.
It's really fun.
Yeah. Because like
It doesn't work.
What does that mean?
I have athlete friends who they have to like go to these events. I'm just kind of confused about them because it'll be like we're going to a pumpkin patch as a team. And I find that very strange.
What is, I'm not sure what you're describing.
Those are. we
Like
call
team
this
building
team
exercise.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now,
I was curious about this. Like, do you guys find them
We don't have,
helpful?
we don't have that.
You don't have them. Okay.
talk about team bonding. A lot of like sports team bonding is specifically put in during our practice times. So
Okay.
we'll do, the pumpkin patch is a great example because the swim team will go to the pumpkin patch during the fall, right before Hendricks Invitational will meet. And it gives us a chance to get out of the water like a day before the meet, give our muscles a chance to relax, and also have a chance to build that team bonding that we want and have that chance with the team. But we're also in the team focus. Like all the time. I'm with them with friends. I have friends outside of swimming as well, but like because of the schedules, I'm always with them. So it's like there's a hard balance, like we're required to go to it. It's fun, it's a great chance for us to relax before a swim meet or something. But it's also like if I could, I'd rather spend that time in the water training or back home doing homework or sleeping.
I've had a number of students tell me too, that schedules for games are negotiated. Is that true? Like coaches kind of can negotiate.
Oh, like with other schools?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, they create their own schedules.
they create their schedules, right?
Yeah,
So, like, if it's demanding, there's a reason why it's demanding. It's not just like random.
yeah, I definitely think schedules, especially in college, are made with very much intentionality of like opponent versus obviously region. Like lacrosse is a bit of a different thing. I coming from the Northeast where like you can't go 30 minutes from a school where there's not lacrosse. Like
Right.
a college, like here, you have to strategically.
Now we go to Ohio.
Yeah, no, you have to make those sort of decisions done strategic. I guess this is not really on the point, but you made strategically based on like opponents and location and things of that nature. So that was
College scheduling is one of like the key things in college sports right now because there's so many like moving factors in it all. So like recently, this is a Division I example. Wake Forest canceled next year's game that they scheduled like 4 or 5 years out against the University of Mississippi because they got destroyed last week by them. But what ends up happening a lot of times, at least to my knowledge, I'm not super knowledgeable about D3, and I'll be upfront about that. But there's less of a focus on like regionality scheduling and especially local scheduling because there's different academic standings, different like financial needs for different schools. Like, the whole reason we're moving a conference, in my opinion at least, I haven't talked to anyone, it's financial. So really a lot of like scheduling doesn't really come down to like being intentional. A lot of it is like for convenience, at least in my experience, understanding that. Granted, now it's kind of shifted. But
You mean the change from SC was that SCS?
SAA and SCAC.
so
What is it again?
It's SAA and SCAC, SCAC.
like like I'm just thinking of examples in my head. So like the Hendricks football team, if I'm correct, we don't play the University of the Ozarks, but they are now in the way. And soon we will be. But if I'm correct, then we're gonna lose a game to Rhodes, which is like 2.5 hours, which is also easy. Yeah.
You're forced to play that game. You're forced to play the game against Rhodes. It's not this game.
No, but next year.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
So like we're kind of losing one, but then we're gaining another. So it's
Well, some of that scheduling is intentional there because.
yes.
Like, for example, for football, I think basketball seems to follow that. is, for example, in football, we traveled to Mount Airy, Georgia the last 2 years, and that's brutal. And now this year, it's like, I mean, I'm like, thank God, you know what I mean? So there's some of that where they try to flip flop so that the burden's on the other team sometimes, so it's not always on. San Antonio is another example. Went to Trinity, that's a horrible little travel. So, you know, when they come here, I mean, plus I think that sometimes like when, for example, football or basketball are away, we also have the opportunity to host other sports and other, I think like we had like regionals, like soccer tournaments and stuff over at the sports complex where it might be for high schools and stuff like that come to our facilities and use them while we're not, our athletes aren't here.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we didn't really meditate or talk about Joe's question that much, right? About what is going to college for? What is going to a liberal arts college for? Right? Because I think there is some of that, like some of that seems to be expressed tension. So I want to hear more about that. I engage in athletic endeavors, but I didn't like as an athlete at college, right? So I kind of like have a sense of like what the value is for me, right? I know why I do other things and what I take the purpose to be, but I think that's important to talk about. What is being an athlete for? What is like why do people choose not to, right? Even if maybe they are athletic, played sports before. Right? What's the kind of like conception like being a student athlete?
Well, something I think about, just I guess because I'm a non-athlete, but something I think about is that athletes and non-athletes all like typically have something that they enjoy doing, like outside of the performance areas, like together as just like students as people.
Yeah.
For example, I know ghost roast is like a big thing, but like certain teams I don't know which ones like can't go. So a lot of people hold like a re-roast, which is like a party the next day, so that athletes can be involved. And I think that Hendrix right now, in my opinion, is kind of missing those events that like will actually fit into athlete schedule. Like I think the Saturday and Sunday events are kind of crucial. Like Cabaret, for example, last year everyone went to that. Like not everyone, but like a lot of people went to that. And I think it was because it was a formal event. People got to dress up kind of fancy. And I think just like stepping outside of like an athlete and non-athlete roles, you kind of just have people who enjoy like looking good and feeling good and like playing games with their friends. And I feel like Hendrix is kind of missing those events where you're kind of just like take a break for a second of like what your role is as a Hendrix student, and you can just like engage as a person and do things you find fun. And I think especially the timeline of like Saturday and Sunday, I feel like we need more events during that time frame where we can actually get athletes and non-athletes to like be in the same area. Because Friday is pretty much like a no deal for athletes in season. And I don't know exactly how that's going to happen. I feel like it kind of relies on some of the like the clubs and committees on their planning, and also just like hall councils and stuff. I feel like there should be more of a incentive for people to have these big events because people want to do it. People love dressing up. People love just like getting to take a break and be themselves, but they're not really afforded that many opportunities, and that's why I feel like it's such a divide. Like people end up just doing that in the comfort of their own home, to like people they always see and never get to intermingle.
So for athletes, how easy or difficult is it for you to be involved in clubs on campus? Like,
Clubs themselves, I say, would be a little harder due to time commitment, but I definitely think there's a lot of opportunities to go to, you know, if home, like things like cabaret or things during the week. I think it just comes down to coming in as a freshman. A lot of leadership on teams is not preaching like, hey, you should go see this screening. Hey, you shouldn't go seeing this like this musical or whatever's going on. And I think it's huge for older athletes to come in and try to flip that narrative. Because at the end of the day, you're a freshman coming into a bunch of 22-year-old, 21-year-olds. Like you're showing up and you're scared shitless of these guys. Bigger, stronger, faster than you. Like you are going to follow their lead. Their leadership is very important. And I think there's a huge just kind of athletic culture is that you do these one to two things like that your whole team does, but you don't all intermingle. And I bring this up saying I don't have much of an idea as to how to change that, other than for like I know myself take the honor as a senior, take the onus upon myself to help our underclassmen come to events and make sure they're aware of things going on campus because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that you kind of just have to bite the bullet on like what days are not gonna work, because it's like you have to do events if it's gonna be like a big event on Friday. And I don't think that like aggregately like changing it from a Friday to Monday is gonna affect that much. Some people like if you play collegiate sports, you will be able to do some stuff, you won't be able to do some stuff. We don't get to go to really any events in the spring. Like, yeah, Miss Hendricks, like we've missed 2 out of the 3. Yeah, we missed 2 out of 3, which like sucks. But like, yeah, like that, it's a cost.
Yeah,
to benefit ratio.
Maybe I just like wasn't like considering enough. I do agree that we can't just like switch on dates, but I think sometimes just having more events added, like sure we have the Friday thing, like Saturday and Sunday, maybe we also add things that like are separate from the Friday event, but also just like anyone can attend. Because I think it's a weekend, people want to have fun, they want to attend things.
More opportunities.
Yeah. Well, the more opportunities we have, like is the more chances we have for people to interact, for people to just kind of take a breath and just speak.
One proposal would be to have a 4-day week, have Fridays off, then parties Thursday night.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What were we even talking about?
I would learn things, that's how it would be.
Yeah.
How do we get Dr. Butler?
Yeah.
I said that on camera, but
Broadcast them.
But even if we did that though, honestly, even if you did that
serious, yeah.
like, once a semester, just take a Friday off for the whole campus to do it.
So there's so much 5 day, if we're supposed to prepare you for life, capitalism, then the 5-day work week is important. But also if we're supposed to do something that's different to some degree and value something that's, well-rounded, type of life, then that's my point of view. Then yeah, it should be like maybe 4 days. Maybe we have, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday schedule. Yeah, we say we value multiple things, and there's more time, not just for parties, but for cultural engagement, right? And for it might open up scheduling the sports scheduling doesn't need to come into a Friday necessarily. You know what I mean? Like there's ways to change all of these things. They're not set in stone. That's what I'm saying.
So my high school actually did a 4-day school week. And but basically it allowed for athletes to not miss as much classes because I know I have a small hometown school, half the athletes, all the students are athletes there as well. And some days, some of my afternoon classes would be very sparse when I wasn't in season. Other days, everyone would be there. And it's having that Friday means coaches were able to put more days in Friday, so they weren't missing as much classes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna go to. I think if you took out that Friday class, instead of opening it up for more activities, I think then my coach would be like, all right, now we're gonna do 3 things on Friday. It's true. We don't have classes in the morning, you have practice. Now we're gonna do something else. I think it would open up more time for our coaches to, unless obviously you did kind of like how we have now where, anything before was at 4 o'clock. It's not mandatory with sports. That's kind of like time here at the Bridgres.
But what I do think, sorry, you mentioned like clubs, like joining clubs. I do think just as a general rule, like people are excited when you engage, especially professors, especially admin. And I've never walked in somewhere and been like, I want to be a part of this, and they're like, ooh, yeah. But I do think that like coming into school is very daunting, and I do think as like an upperclassman, I don't know many people who play sports who are upperclassmen that are like very engaged on campus. I don't know a lot. And I know probably 15. But I think there are more than 15 people on Henderson campus, and I wish it was 50% of people were engaged. And so I think that like flexibility from professors is like very valuable, and like definitely there are definitely some people that are less flexible than others. And that is okay. Not everyone's gonna be as flexible. But I do think it's just that kind of like inertia of like taking that first step and like wanting, like showing a want to engage, showing a want to be a part of different things on campus can definitely be hard when there's not a lot of, I feel like, role models. Like in some spaces, there are not as many role models of people who are engaging. And anything we've talked about where it's like, oh, but like I don't like, or like if I truly hate like musical theater plays and like I despise that. Like I obviously like should not have to go to that, and I wouldn't go to that. I like it. But I do think that like there are definitely other things that I do love. Like I love like cooking and like sewing, and then I can find another two things out. And if everyone on campus like picked like 3 things that they enjoyed, and they went to one of those things once a month, like Henderson would be a very live place. And I do think like people will sort themselves in like different spaces with different things. I think there are a lot of students on campus that love basketball and will spend a lot of days a week in the spring watching basketball who have never been to a Hendrix basketball game. But I think there's a little bit of like a kind of distance, but there's a little bit of like a blank space of like common sense of like, you really enjoy this. There are people at Hendrix who also love basketball. They play it for the 4 hours a day. And it's just kind of like separating that like first step and like creating inertia. And so if we had like we have Odyssey, which is sick, but if we had something else that was like, you can get like a Hendrix event registered as a like, I don't know, like there's like a Drix event, and then it's like you have to go to 3 Drix events a year. Like as a student. And then
You should have the Hendrix Immersion Project, which is an Odyssey project, right? And I think sport.
Yeah.
Now, that could actually be a systematic structure. Could be the way that, the first year seminars set. So like, we have explorations in TEC, but it could be the case that the Hendrix Immersion Project is what you do your first semester when you come.
Every semester, all 4 years.
Or every semester, all 4 years, or a structure that continues throughout, right?
Yeah.
Where it's actually technically like, it could be a course when you first get here. And then that's like, this is what the liberal arts is, be well rounded.
It's not
Lots of different things.
So
Yeah.
also bring the communications email back.
Yes. I'm trying to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who built the app. Shout out. Like I don't want to use that.
Sandy, but the email's better.
The email just like I'm reading it in the morning, like as opposed to having to go search for it on the app.
Yeah, like bring the communications email back 100%.
You think that's a common view?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I was shocked when they got rid of it.
And
Yeah.
again, the app is cool, but one of the
Yeah.
I think it was
Once we have resources.
I think it was the idea of the app was forced in. It wasn't like a need for the app. And then
Yeah.
I think there was the odd assumption made that both could not coexist.
Yeah.
So they were and very clearly both can coexist.
Because the calendar is very helpful, but at the same time, like having like every day I used to wake up last year and check my phone for my communications every time I woke up. And that I stay plugged in every day. And I feel like especially if I get it once weekly, I want to read that, and most just gonna like sit on my mind. And if I don't have a constant reminder, or if I'm like not being constantly updated with new stuff, I just won't know. And like I'm not gonna screen through everything and click each thing to read the description.
My trouble is I get the email on Monday, and I know what I'm gonna eat for lunch, and I'm like,
That's a real word.
also know what I think about Wednesday.
Yeah.
On Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
For personal experience too, I know the communications email actually. Joe can attest to this one. I was scrolling through the communications email one time. I saw a trip available that I wouldn't see on the app. But
Yes.
I didn't read about that. And like I look on this, I was just scrolling through. I saw this trip, and I was gifted the opportunity to go to Ireland, and I went to Ireland in summer. Like, and like that was simply because I was scrolling through. That's not something I'm going to go searching out for on an app. It's something if I'm reading my email, I'm gonna That's just a specific example of that.
It also makes it easier for us to bring it back to the topic at hand, but kind of. I also sent an email to the communication people, like shortly after I got here, because of just what you guys are saying, like it comes out, you read it, right? You read it, I read it from top to bottom religiously. But I'm like, well, where are the sporting events? Oh, you have to go look it up on the calendar. I'm like, I don't even know what sports are in season. I mean, football and basketball, but I couldn't tell you when lacrosse is in season or when golf is in season. But if you told me, I might show up to some of them. Kind of like,
Is it on the app?
No.
Yep, it's not on that.
you have to look it up.
Unless there's something that we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the sports will post their schedule on their Instagram page, but like, then you have to go searching for it.
But you already have. Yeah, you've already got the framework and the second and so it's figured out to people.
Exactly. I know there's a couple times like last year where I was just like walking around campus and I heard like something in the stadium or something like in the basketball arena. I was like, I didn't even know we had a game. Like I heard people talking about going to a game. I was like, this is news to me. And now I was lucky enough that I had a friends were asking, so like they told me about the games in particular, but I don't think it should be like left up to people who play sports to advertise their games. I think if we're gonna send out the emails every week, like daily,
Then everybody can.
yeah, and then if we add the games there, I mean, people are obviously going to show up. I mean, like you said, you found that trip to go to Ireland. It's like people read that stuff. People care about what's in there, and it's like it's almost criminal not advertising the games. People actually want to go. They just really have no idea like where to find them. And when you have to go to Instagram or go to the website and look up a specific sport or like and try to find stuff, it's just like people just don't do that. It just adds too much complexity. And I think just having daily communications about like, hey, these games going on, like keep your eye out for like this day in the calendar. I think that would build up a lot of hype for sports, and that like the turnout will be like insane compared to.
So I'm hearing like bring back Hendricks today, sports.
Exactly. I think that's a
Decent.
it's a realistic change in my opinion, and I think it's something that like could happen pretty quickly, but also would have drastic effects like in the amount of time that it gets like instituted. Like a lot of the stuff we were talking about was kind of like changing our mindset like socially. And I know like all of us here were like having a competition to do that, but I think like the immediate effects of just like adding Hendricks today and adding the games is going to be something that affects everyone. Like especially the people who can't be here or the people who are unwilling to have these conversations. Like this is something like anyone can be part of. I don't know. I think it's a great idea.
What do you think? What do you think about faculty having more classes that have to do
More classes, yes.
with sports?
Oh, totally.
Is that a reasonable thing to
So can you repeat that more clearly? Classes that have more what?
like?
Classes about sports.
Classes about sports?
Yeah.
Like I teach a class it's called Free Will, Agents, and Intentions, and it's about the last third of it is about athletes.
Right.
But it's not in the title. So like, and I wrote a paper on like, being in the flow as an athlete that I published, right? But like, should I be like, hey, this is a great course? I feel like I'm always like kind of just pitching it for the
I would say a word.
or something. But I feel like, should I do that? And should faculty do that? Should there be classes that are aimed at having that be a central discussion?
I would say a worry there would be that athletes would just flood that class, creating more of like, hey, this is like just like a class for athletes, creating more of that divide of like, you're an athlete, you take that class, but if you're not an athlete, like, and I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen, but that I can see that as possible.
See, it's also I'm not athletic.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah.
So that doesn't.
So what would be the worry about that? Like, what's the worry? Like, what are the bad consequences
Of
this
just class with simply athletes. I mean, I think it just creates more of that sense of like, you walk by a class and see just like 50 guys and 50 guys, 20, we don't have 50, like 15, 20 people in class that are all athletes, or you hear about this class, and it just creates more of that like us against them mentality, not in like a like combative sense, but like the sense that it is on campus. Yeah.
I totally agree. There's like an implicit message there that says you know athletes are welcome in this class because it's about sports, not because they're welcome in the class regardless of if they're doing sports or not. And you can talk about sports in class, that's great. But the title, I would worry for that reason.
Well, if I'm correct, we either have or we still have sports statistics. You need prerequisites for that, which is it's crazy to me. But like, if I'm correct, that's in like business major and
Sports management.
sports management. That's a class.
There's a class called sports
Interesting. Yeah. So if I'm correct, it's mostly athletes who just take that, which is it's frustrating.
I think the percentage of athletes in business management is also higher.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. If you just have more departments in general,
Which I'm going to take on business programs.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. Like, I know we have like the learning domains and course codes like that. I think it'd be interesting if we had like, I guess, domains about like interest or like maybe if you're interested in this class would be good for you. And we don't have to like title things that are about like this is a sports class. We say if you're interested in this, like you would look at the courses with these codes and maybe like that'd be interesting to you. Or like I know with like economics, I haven't taken a course yet, but when Chapo came, like it was very interesting, and I would have never known because like I've never done anything adjacent to economics. So like I think kind of I guess like kind of advertising these courses in a way that like will get people to realize what it's about in like a interest value way rather than just like kind of course description. I think would be kind of interesting to do. And I know that's very complex to try to do something like that, but I just think it's kind of interesting. Maybe even having more like experiences like this where you go to like a lecture from a certain department and like that's how you gauge interest. Like you don't have to commit to a full class. Maybe you just take a lecture one day and just see how it goes. Like these after class opportunities to gauge interest in different fields.
He kind of made me think of something kind of like Amazon, but like when you go on a product,
Yeah.
bomb and be like people who bought this also bought.
Yeah.
It's like it's like students who took this course also joined this course.
Yeah.
That'd be like crazy. Like, that sounds like a very hard thing to implement, but like
It'd be interesting, yeah.
it'd be an interesting thing. Like it's because
We should have
if someone enjoyed that, likely enjoy another class that you may also enjoy.
I do think that makes a lot of sense. But I do also think that isn't going to help like
History majors too.
But what I do think is like my goal. I mean, I'm also just a very excitable person, but what the divide between like athletes and athletes is getting people excited to be a Hendrix student. I think is like the number one goal. Because if you're excited to be a Hendrix student, you're gonna want to go support your. I'm gonna call them teammates, just like anyone, like you know, Team Hendrix, like play sport, you don't play sport, you're excited to go support your teammates, you're excited to go support like your cast who's like performing and like you're excited to see like the costume department, excited to see like the art department. I think just exciting, getting people excited to be a Hendrix student is what I think is the number one way to bridge that gap.
How do we do that?
I think there's a lot of different ways. I get excited when I get to be around people and like seeing people having fun. And I do think that the one way that people come together, Hendrix is when there are parties. I think that's like whenever I see like the biggest mass amount of people at Hendrix. But I do think there are other ways to have fun that are not parties. I think just like exercising like different ways. Like fun lawn games is one thing that I really like. And so just like I don't do like a Hendrix frisbee golf like tour where like anybody who likes frisbee golf Hendrix gets the bus and does and just like quirky things that like I don't know like Hendrix that are also fun that people get to go and like
Steel Center.
Steel Center.
Oh yeah.
Like
All about it.
or like doing like
Context sport.
No.
Dangerous.
or doing like a video game competition on the Bailey lawn, like on one of the blow up screens. Or something like that, where it's you like video games, come you crush some homies in video games. You don't like you go watch because that's so fun and funny.
We talked about getting a fire pit out here.
Yeah, and just like stuff like that. I just
It'll be great.
Yeah.
What?
Bocce ball. Yeah.
If I could summarize a couple things I'm hearing, it's just we need more events that are geared towards everyone, and then we need less friction to get people to those events.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm gonna bring some institutional history to this, from memory, but, one of the things that really excites me is that there is so much cool stuff going on at Hendrix now, right? Like when I started about 1 million years ago, right, we had kind of a small number of activities, right? In fact, it was even, there was this thing, called, but so certain programs could cancel everything else on campus happening at that time, right? So if there was a show on Thursday, right? Thursday could like be completely blocked out from the schedule and nobody else could schedule anything. Faculty couldn't put department meetings on the schedule, right? The student knitting club had to go underground and could like help people. Right?
It was Wednesday nights.
It was, I mean, I'm sure it was Thursdays, but it could have been Wednesday too. I don't know. I just know I tried to schedule stuff.
Longer, like trimester period, Wednesdays out.
So, yeah, I scheduled something on a Thursday and I'm like, well, people were not happy with me about that one. It was, it was not good. So part of the excitement of all of this, is that we've got a lot of stuff going on campus, right? And I'm really sensitive to the idea that, that we don't, communicate it to each other, maybe in the most effective way we could, right? And I mean, I think also there's a neat Odyssey project in there for student, right? Like tracking and posting, stuff on Hendrix Today about games, right? That'd be a neat Odyssey project. It would definitely take up the hours, right, that it would require for an Odyssey, right? It's a way to spread the information that actually, hey, there's a lot of neat stuff going on. So yeah, I mean, this doesn't have to be the only option, but I'm loving like the input from y'all. And for me, it's exciting to have this conversation.
Me too.
Because Conway is not a 1-horse town anymore. Like we're at least up to 2.5 horses. So,
Well,
This is.
let's give us all a round. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Talking about this. Next week, we don't have Wednesday afternoon discussion, but what we do have on Friday at 4 o'clock is a curator talk, let's call it. So we have an exhibit that was curated by Sydney Austin, who's graduating in spring. She took my aesthetics contemporary art class and she asked to curate a show. I said, hell yeah. And she put it together entirely herself, wrote the whole concept of it, put out a call for submissions for artists to send work, selected the work, organized for the work to come, wrote all the descriptions. And she's gonna talk about why she made the choices she made. And she wants to become a curator at the museum. So this is a big deal. Okay. So it's a really great project.
At least a couple of the artists will be joining us on Zoom.
Yeah.
So after Sydney gives her talk, when it wanders around buildings, whatnot, we'll have to set up a laptop set up where you can one-on-one interact with artists with Zoom. So
Yeah, so come next week, Friday, bring your parents. If your parents are here, I want to meet your parents. And I love meeting your parents. And great artists, and check out the work. Check out the work. It's in the building right now on this floor and on the staircase and upstairs. So check it out, read the descriptions. And if you see Sydney, congratulate her, because this is a big deal to be discussed. Come next week, and there'll be snacks and drinks.